Hey everyone, I just want to let you know that we are doing some changes to make things a little different for you all, and I wanted to ease you into these changes as best as I could because they can be a little harsh on the eyes. I just want to welcome you to the fish tank. Hey everyone, I'm Garrett Hallfish. Welcome to the fish tank. This week, I want to go over some news that we kind of missed last week. I didn't realize it until the end of the week that I completely missed it. God of War 4 came out, or they didn't come out, but there were some leaks that showed some of the concept art for that game. And there's a lot of changes coming to God of War. I mean, let's start with the fact that he's got a beard. That's still not wearing a shirt, but he does have more clothes this time around. More importantly, he's finally wearing pants. It looks to be more like Norse mythology. So they're leaving the Greeks behind. This is a new era for Kratos. And the world, it's beautiful. It's floral, it's vibrant. It's just a pleasure to look at. And I just want to see if with this new Kratos, they bring more character to him. They make him less of a two-dimensional character. We won't really know until we see more about it, but the fact that for a franchise where 7 games have the same Kratos and then this new one all of a sudden changes all that, that's a huge change for a game that has largely been the same since the beginning. So that can actually be really exciting. And because of that, I want to talk to you about some other games that have changed in the series without spin-offs. The ones that are in their core series that are just different. So first off, let's talk about a few games. I mean, Assassin's Creed, you've got Grand Theft Auto, Fallout. These are all games where each game is different. They generally always have a different main character, a different setting, sometimes a different time period. And this is partially what makes those series exciting because you don't know what to expect next. And so even if they come out more often, like Assassin's Creed, it still keeps them somewhat more exciting than if it was the same game every single year. Now, another yearly franchise, Call of Duty, got kind of into a rut with this kind of modern era of just shooting. So like there's a lot of Middle Eastern fighting and in Afghanistan, Iraq, just these areas that we were already familiar with and we could kind of relate to because we see a lot of it on the news. And it was kind of getting stale after a while. So it was really refreshing when a few years ago they decided to go into the future. Lo and behold, that ends up being pretty much what the series needed. I mean, you added a double jump because of the exoskeleton, you have different kinds of weapons. Just, it almost makes it kind of a different game because you have all these technologies that don't exist. And it makes it exciting because it still feels like a Call of Duty game, but it also feels new and refreshing. And for a drastic change, I would think Jak and Daxter 2. The difference between Jak and Daxter and Jak and Daxter 2 is incredible. I mean, Jak and Daxter, the original game, that's like a classic PS2 era 3D adventure game where you're just trying to collect all these different orbs, you're just punching guys, kicking guys, and just platforming around and jumping from one platform to the next. And I love the game for that. And then in the sequel, it's a completely different kind of game. It's almost like a GTA meets Ratchet and Clank kind of game where you're zooming around this huge city. The fact that they decided to do that and make this vast open world and then to add all these shooting mechanics to a game where it didn't exist at all. It just changes the tone of the game. It's more ambitious than the game. Jak talks in the second one. These are things that most franchises don't do in a sequel, and that's really refreshing for that. Now this one's stretching it a little bit in the spin-off category, I want to talk about Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, which was for the GameCube. Now, I still count this one because Donkey Kong Country is a 2D Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, 2D Donkey Kong. It's close enough in my book. Now, this game's interesting in that the main difference is the change in controls. They decided to use the same controls from the Donkey Konga games, the ones where you're beaten to the music, to make a platforming game. And it actually works pretty well and makes it enjoyable for a different reason. It could have just been a bland 2D game, but because they added this new control scheme, it's the same thing where people are playing Dark Souls with the Guitar Hero sets, or they're playing Dark Souls using the Move controllers, these kind of things, where it takes a game that we already know, we are already familiar with, and we may frankly be a little bored by it, and makes it exciting again by elevating the way we play it. Now, you can't really talk about the change in video games in general without quickly going over the fact that when we jumped from 2D to 3D, so many games changed completely. They had to think of a whole new way to think of these games. Some games didn't survive it, Sonic. Other games thrived in it, Mario. And it's incredible to see the differences between just adding another dimension. So games like Metroid, which was traditionally this 2D side-scrolling action game, became this vast, not quite open world, but this imaginative world from a first person's perspective. That's a major change. You've got Metal Gear, which was an over-the-top stealth game, a game that already wasn't very common, and it translated beautifully into 3D, and now you had to be aware of so many other things going on at once, and it created this franchise that is huge now. Not to mention Kid Icarus, probably one of the best examples where the classic Kid Icarus games, these little side-scrolling games, they're okay, but they remake it for the 3DS, or not remake it, but reboot it for the 3DS, and all of a sudden this is like an on-rail shooter game. You've got non-stop talking, bantering, talking about what's going on, breaking the fourth wall. You've got interesting control schemes that kind of cramp your hands, but it becomes this game that a lot of people miss, but a lot of people honestly should go play because it feels so new. Now, one game series that is most famous for making that jump to 2D to 3D is, of course, Mario. It went from this small little rinky-dinky side-scroller, which tons of people love, and became this juggernaut of a 3D open world game, or not open world, but this 3D game that people love and adore and demand year after year after year. Now, you've got N64. It's just him going around Peach's castle, exploring the 3D world, letting you interact with it. The GameCube, all of a sudden now he has a water pack, and it completely changes his moveset. And he's cleaning up smudge, and that just adds a new level to gameplay. And then all of a sudden comes out with the Wii, and he's in space. He's floating around planets. It's adding so much more dimension to these levels and this platforming, and it just creates what many people think is the best 3D Mario game. Now, here's where the problem lies. Where do you go from there? Because isn't space the final frontier? And with that, that is another episode of The Fish Tank. If you enjoyed it, or even if you hated it, please, whatever you do, just make sure to hit that little subscribe button there. It helps us a lot. I hope you enjoyed this. Please, if you have any questions, feel free to find us on Facebook via the description below. You can also follow us on Twitter at NerdMuchCom. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. See you next time. Now, one underappreciated game that went through a major change is, of course, The Legend of Zelda. You've got The Legend of Zelda, then you have Zelda 2, The Legend of Link, the only one that has Link as the legend. This game, it's a hidden gem. It's incredibly difficult, so thank God that the Wii U has all those save states. But it takes what was traditionally a top-down 2D game and turned it into a side-scrolling 2D game. And it added leveling up mechanics, and it added jumping all the time, and it just completely changed things. It almost became more of an RPG, something that the series has honestly been lacking. So if you enjoy The Legend of Zelda, I highly suggest you go back and play this one.